These are the 7 things you need to avoid as a property investor. You've probably heard of the saying that your first deal is always the hardest. And I guess it's true because when things go wrong, it's most likely one of the problems I'm going to talk about. Some of these mistakes I've made myself and the rest I've seen others make and learn to avoid. Purchasing a property is one of the most expensive things you'll ever do. You gotta do it right. So if you watch to the end of this video, I promise you'll save yourself money and stress. I'm gonna start off with one of the most fundamental mistakes, which is not having a solid plan. Now, admittedly, this was me at the start, right? When I started investing in property properly in 2019, I bought a high HMO first, and then I bought a buy-to-let, started looking at a few service accommodations. I basically didn't have a clear plan. And the thing with that scattergun approach is that if you don't have the end in the mind from the start, you're going to suffer with average results. And it's not just me, I see so many people not having a clear idea of what they want from property. Are you investing in property so you can replace your income and quit your 9-to-5 job? Then you may want to choose a cash flowing strategy. But if you're looking to build a retirement fund and not really concerned about making money immediately, then you may want to consider going for appreciating properties. Just remember that your long-term goals are going to be the driver of your investment strategy. Without having a clear plan, you'll end up taking wild stabs in the dark, and if you do that, unless you get very lucky, property investing will end up costing you a lot. And even if you get lucky, your luck will eventually run out. So please work your way backwards and start thinking of some of these things. Number 1, are you investing for cash flow or appreciation? Number 2, are you going to rent the property or flip it? Number 3, will you be purchasing buy-to-lets or converting them to HMOs or Airbnb? Next one, are you buying them under your personal name or a limited company? These are all of the things you need to think about before you even think about investing in property. Once you know your goals, you can work out what you need to do to achieve them and then work your way backwards. The second mistake, which a lot of investors make, which kind of ties in with not having a clear plan, is not doing enough of their own research. So before you buy a car, TV, or book a holiday, people compare different websites to ask a lot of questions and check out the reviews to try and figure out whether the purchase they're considering is worth the money. Makes sense. Now, considering the property costs way more than all of those things put together, then your research on that property should be even more rigorous. But unfortunately, so many investors mess up because they don't do their research. What exactly do I mean by research? Well, checking the sold prices of properties similar to the one you're considering. That's one of them. You can use property portals like Zoopla and Rightmove for the sold prices. That's easy enough to do. At the same time, check rental rates so you can calculate the returns you're likely to achieve. Think about the kind of tenants you want to attract. Look at the facilities, schools, transport links nearby. If you're considering buying in a student area, is there a demand for accommodation, or is the area pretty saturated? Before you buy a property, walk around the area, research the crime statistics, and find out what kind of regeneration is planned nearby, and ask a lot of questions when you go to view a property about not only the property but also the area where the property is, because you can change a lot about your property but not where it is. And to be fair, a lot of these questions can be asked by just picking up the phone and calling the estate agents. So I rarely watch TV, right? But one of the things I do really enjoy watching is Dragon's Den. If you've watched Dragon's Den before, then you've probably seen and possibly even laughed when people pitch their business ideas and have no idea about their numbers, the turnover, the profit or loss. No idea. Property investors are no different. Now, thankfully, I come from an accounting background, so I'm fairly comfortable with knowing my numbers, and I am so glad because yes, property can make you a lot of money, but not if you don't know the numbers. Knowing how much the property refurb's going to cost, how much rent you can expect, how much your monthly mortgage payments will be, and the ongoing costs like insurance, repairs and maintenance. You need to be on top of those numbers so you know whether or not an investment is for you. Now, I'm not saying that you should know all of these numbers to the penny or even top of your head, but you have to have a system or process which tells you these things. I personally use a deal analyzer that I created, and I punch all of the numbers in that I've just talked about, and then it'll automatically tell me whether it's a good deal or not. That's what I mean by knowing your numbers. Remember that money is made when you buy a property, not sell it. And if you want to increase your chances of making money, you have to know your numbers. Without understanding these numbers, you could end up overpaying for a property, not having enough cash flow to cover the mortgage payments, or find yourself unable to afford the repairs and maintenance needed. Do the number crunching and make sure you understand all of the numbers associated with each property before making a final decision. And that's why I use the deal analyzer, because I'm not perfect, I'm human, I'm likely to make a mistake, but with this way, by using a deal analyzer, it's very unlikely to miss out any cost, because the formulas and the numbers in the Excel sheet, they do everything for you. So that way I'm not missing a trick. We'll get back to the video in a few seconds, but 70% of you watching this video aren't subscribed to my channel. Please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button and buy more properties in the next few months. I'll be sharing everything so you can learn from my mistakes for free. Anyways, back to the video. Another big mistake to avoid when investing in property is overpaying for the property. So when you're looking to buy an investment property, it's a business decision. So your decisions need to be different from buying a property that you're going to live in yourself. For example, just because the property you're about to buy doesn't have a kitchen island or a nice garden, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to make you money. Just like that, adding a fancy media wall to your buy-to-let isn't guaranteed to get you a higher rental yield or capital gains on the property in the future. So it's important to remember that while you may be emotionally invested in a particular property, maybe it's your first investment, or maybe you just really like this one property and you really wanted it. Unfortunately, when it comes to investing, none of that really matters. It's can you make money and what return am I going to get? A professional property investor knows how to put the emotions in the backseat. This is why it goes back to doing your research and knowing your numbers, because if you tick off those two things, just think about it, then it makes it easier to stay rational, because you know exactly what that property is worth, so there's less chance to overpay. When you overpay on a house, it has a massive domino effect. You end up overextending yourself and taking on too much debt, creating more payments that you just can't afford, making less money than you thought, and that's how not to do property. So before you offer on anything, have a budget in mind based on the prices of comparable homes and stick to it. There will always be other opportunities, so even if you miss out on this one opportunity that you really thought was yours, that you really liked, you was going to make lots of money, always think that the reason why you missed out on a certain property is that it wasn't a good deal for you and the numbers didn't work out. And if they did, the property will be yours. And that's how I kind of convinced myself. So think with your head and not your heart. So across all my social media, mostly on Instagram and TikTok, if there is one question that I get asked over and over again, it's the classical question, is now a good time to buy? And my answer would usually always go along the lines of, if it's a good deal and the numbers work, it's always a good time to buy, because that's the truth. And a lot of them will come back with a reply like, I'm waiting for interest rates to come down, or I'm waiting for prices to fall. Basically, they're always waiting for this perfect moment, but the reality is there is never a perfect moment. There's a saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. It's the same with property. For the majority of us property investors who don't have a crystal ball, rather than trying to time the market, we need to adopt a long-term perspective of our property investments, because it's not like property is a get-rich-quick scheme. The majority of your wealth in property comes from holding onto the asset for many years. And if you're there just waiting and more waiting, how are you supposed to make money if you're not even in the game, right? And of course, property involves a degree of risk which investment class doesn't. But unlike most investment classes out there, the thing with property is that over the long term, it's very forgiving. So say you overpaid for a property today by, let's say, £20,000. If you hold on to it long enough, it's most likely after, say, 10 years, the property's price would have recovered your losses, because over the time, we all know that property prices do go up. It just, you have to wait for long enough for it to do that. And one last thing about the whole waiting thing is that whilst you're there waiting, your money isn't exactly growing in the banks with those super low interest rates. If anything, it's literally getting eaten by inflation. So what are your options? Even my worst property deals have returned way more than what any bank could offer. So don't wait to buy a property and wait. Right, for the next one, if you want to hate property, make property another job for you, get burnt out from it, and then end up quitting it altogether, then the quickest, most certain way of doing that is by doing everything on your own. The most successful property investors understand that they don't need to be experts at everything. And to be able to have a real property business, they need to build a team around them. The best analogy of a property investor or entrepreneur in general is that the team is like the orchestra, and you as a business owner are the conductor of that orchestra. So if you're looking to invest in property, you need to start thinking about what does that team look like that lets you buy all these properties, refurb them, and then actually make that income passive for you. The goal is to have control over your time, and how you do that is by not doing everything yourself and building out a team. In my example, I don't view the properties myself. I don't do the refurbs. I hire contractors. I don't manage the refurbs. I have a project manager. I don't look for financing myself. I use a mortgage broker. I don't manage the properties. My property manager handles that. And that's what I mean by not doing everything yourself. So when I bought my first property in 2013, I made every mistake I now talk about not making. And it's pretty obvious to me now looking back. It's because I didn't take the time to learn. And because of that reason, whenever someone now asks me, VJ, how do I get started in property? I always say the same thing, that the first thing you gotta do is take the time to learn and get educated. The different strategies in property, the ways to make money in property, best practices and rules and regulations, as much as you can, right? The beauty is that information nowadays is so accessible in different formats. There's books. If you don't like books, there's YouTube. Don't like YouTube, you can listen to stuff on podcasts now and Audible. There's literally no excuses. My advice is to learn from people who have actually done what you're looking to do, because you need to be getting educated from people who are a few steps ahead of you, because the more you learn, the more you will earn. And talking about learning, if you want to learn about all of the steps involved in purchasing a property, I made a video on how to buy a house from start to finish. I'll put a link to it on the side. Subscribe to my channel and then go watch that next. I'll see you soon.